Good afternoon, Dr. Alan Christensen here with you, and welcome to another episode of Office Hours Live. So good to be with you all today. I'm going to tweak one camera a little bit here, get these things lined up better. So happy Halloween. There we go. All right. Little rearrangement. Okay, that'll work. Happy Halloween. Good to be with you guys. Beautiful, beautiful fall here in the Midwest, and nice to be joining you live. So let me know where you're from and top questions about your health. This is Office Hours Live. This is an opportunity to get more detailed answers than you would get by Googling. And stick around and ask some details, and you'll get some more feedback questions. So yeah, good to see with you. Good to see you guys. Many of you are jumping on. If you've not been here before, welcome. Our main focuses are metabolism, hormones, thyroid health, things along those lines. And we typically see people from all over the world. So I'm always curious to hear what's happening with you and your health. We're seeing folks coming on from Texas, from Idaho, from all over the place, from Ohio. I knew what you meant, Tina. It's okay. And Tucson, the Netherlands. All right, we're kicking in internationally right off the get-go. That's really cool. I'm going to adjust one more thing so I can see what's going on properly here. There we go. Now I got all the windows open. The amazing wonders of technology. And Hawaii as well. So yeah, welcome Ashley from Hawaii and Rodna from the Netherlands, you from all over the place. I'm with you all today on a couple of platforms. We're on Instagram, on YouTube Live, and on Facebook Live. So there's usually a few questions that were sent in advance, and I'll talk about those, and then we'll grab a couple of them that are live. Curious to hear about Halloween plans for the day too. Did trick-or-treaters still come out? Where we are now, it's pretty rural. We probably won't get any. It'll be unfortunate, but yeah, that's always a fun thing. Oh, and I had some comments about the the image that we shared for soliciting questions was, does everyone know who that was? The image for my outfit with the red and stuff. Who all knows who that outfit was? This is someone I was a real big fan of. He's still around, I guess, but not really been in the public light for some time. But I'm curious to see, there were some people that did guess, and I saw some that had no idea who it was. So I'll keep watching for that. Questions coming on already about thyroidectomy. We'll talk about that. Just finished Halloween. I'm seeing a lot of correct guesses pop up. Frankie knows, Kelly knows, Jerry knows, Maggie knows. He was such a sweet man. I hope he's well these days, but he inspired so many people and really touched so many lives and really made the idea about, being healthy and changing it something that was approachable, and he really, reached out to such a wide audience and made a huge difference. So this was an event I was at several years ago, and we had a dress up evening. I think it was icons, legends, and rock stars was the theme. And this was the icon that I chose to be. He's a cool guy. Okay, yeah, so Richard Simmons for sure. So many are coming on. Welcome. Yeah, I've actually heard someone saying, hope he's well. I've seen him a bit in the news as of late, and he's not been in the public eye anymore, but yeah, wish him well. Hey, Lynn, good to see you as well. Okay, Carol's got some questions for us, many more coming on. So Halloween night, some have already done their Halloween thing. Some are talking about that, but we'll be on here for I'll be on for probably about half hour, 45 minutes or so. We'll cover some of the big ones and then move on with the evening. A couple ones that were sent in advance. And this is interesting because there was actually 3 of them that came in, and there was a theme to these. And I think I saw the gal who sent this question pop up. Looks like Liz is here. Liz, if you had more details you wanted to mention, happy to cover those more thoroughly. I'll talk about this as generalizations. So one was Liz questions about relationship between thyroid and insulin, diabetes and thyroid issues and the relevance of A1C. So I'll touch on that. Another question was about someone who can't lose weight despite being on thyroid meds. And another one I was going to touch on was about chromium picolinate. She was wondering, what it does, what it's useful for, how it plays in. And she recognized Mr. Simmons too. So, all some overlap in those questions, all some relationships, and they all tie into weight loss, blood sugar control, which is what chromium is often touted for. Liz had the most detail on hers. I'll keep an eye out, Liz, if you want to plug in any more details, I'll address those. But yeah, relationship between thyroid and insulin, Hashimoto's diabetes. So the fancy term is bidirectional comorbidity. So bidirectional means it goes both ways. Morbidity is an illness, and co is just that they overlap. So there's a lot of data saying that there's a bidirectional relationship between thyroid disease and diabetes. Basically, if you've got one, you've got higher risks for others. And that's true for type 2 diabetes, which is more commonly adult onset, but it's also true for autoimmune type 1 diabetes. So, yep, they do overlap. There are some reasons why in terms of genetic propensities for autoimmunity, and then also in terms of changes to basal metabolic rate, which is why we think they connect. Can insulin resistance explain high insulin levels and high A1C? Further back, Liz, you asked if an A1C of 5.4, is that unusual for someone who's on a healthy diet? Well, so what is A1C? Is that high? What does insulin relate to with it? Let's talk about that. So the A1C is the glycosylated hemoglobin A1C. And glycosylated just means like sugary. Like if you're handling syrup or honey and your hands are sticky, your red blood cells get sticky like your hands do. Now, it's a normal thing. They transport some glucose around their outer membrane, and a certain percent of their outer membrane gets glucose attached to it. Now, red blood cells are in operation for about 3 months, then they're broken down and new ones take their place. So the amount of glucose on the membrane of a red blood cell is about the average glucose for someone for that prior time of 3 months. And that's helpful because glucose goes up and down all the time. And a certain amount of up and down is pretty normal and not a big deal. But it's that chronic load that gloms onto the blood cells that creates a lot of the problems. So it's both a handy way to measure it over a longer term average, and it's the thing that makes sugar dangerous, is that it's stuck on the red blood cells. So it's a real direct measurement of that. We call A1C scores consistently above 6.4% diabetes and above 7% more poorly controlled diabetes. Healthy people are below that, and you'll hear some push for lower and lower numbers. Healthy people should be in the fours, in the low fives. You don't want to be on the edge of being diabetic, no question about that. But there are a lot of healthy people that have A1C scores of 5.4, never have issues at all. I could say the same thing about 5.8 and 5.9. There's a lot of reasons why people can have a high normal A1C and have no problems at all with your blood sugar. So what's the connection with insulin? And what's this insulin resistance thing? Well, this is interesting. So insulin resistance, we think a lot about insulin being like a bad thing that's dangerous for the body. And when there's way too much of it, there are generally bad things happening. But those bad things are not so much because of insulin and more so because of the problems that give rise to extra insulin. It's an important distinction. So insulin pulls fuel into cells. When there's too much fuel, then the body can sometimes block that on purpose. And it can do that by ignoring insulin. If it didn't ignore it, sometimes that extra fuel going in the cells could be dangerous for people, and that could actually destroy the cells. So insulin resistance is generally a safety mechanism. The body is keeping that fuel out on purpose. Now, it does point to there being a problem, but the problem is not insulin. Insulin is showing there's a problem. So it's more the hallmark of the issue. So Liz is saying fasting insulin is 102, have insulin antibodies over 600. Currently having symptoms similar to hypoglycemia, but no reading of low glucose. So Liz, I'm not familiar with insulin antibodies being up, and those insulin levels are significant. There are those that make a lot of insulin, but it works well. And there's those that make a lot, but it's not working as effectively. So yeah, in terms of lowering A1C and lowering insulin, when it's too high and it's pathological, The main thing that works for that is reversing the amount of triglycerides in the liver. When the liver gets too much triglycerides, then it can't properly break down stored fat. And the body then makes a lot of carbohydrate. The liver makes too much glucose. And interestingly, high glucose in the bloodstream can come from eating carbohydrate or from making glucose. And we can't tell the difference in blood tests commercially, but in research settings, they can. And most adults with type 2 diabetes or tendencies towards that, the issue is they're making too much glucose. It's not just that it poured in from their diet, it's that they're producing too much from their liver. And that's what the whole message of the metabolism reset diet was about. It was about how do you take out those extra triglycerides and help to heal the liver. I'm going to share this link. This is going to show up on the various platforms here. We're doing a free challenge here in a few more days. That'll be this upcoming week. Let me get my proper links up here. Okay, here we go. Yep. This will be on the 7th. And you can do this for free. And this will teach you about how to really reset high insulin, how to reverse early fatty liver, and how to bring A1C scores down. And that's really what this was for, first and foremost, was affecting A1C levels. We've had many people bring A1C scores down by many full points over the course of 4 to 6 weeks. So yeah, entirely possible. Okay. And I want to grab the other couple questions because they did have some tie-ins too. So this person was saying, can't lose weight even though now on T3 and T4. So the thought here, the question behind this question was, or the expectation was that someone was led to think that if they take thyroid hormones that they'll lose weight. Now the truth is that if you're low in thyroid hormones, if you're hypothyroid, it's easier to gain weight and it's harder to lose weight. That's totally true. And if we were in a logical, simple universe, then replacing those hormones that we're lacking should cause just immediate, effortless weight loss. It should just melt away and go away. That rarely happens. It does. I won't say it never happens, but it's by far the exception and not the norm. So a couple of reasons for that. One of which is that taking thyroid medication is not the same as making thyroid hormone. It's not the same in the body. We're seeing more and more data around that. So the more you can help your own production improve, the better you do, whether you're on medication or not. And that's why I'm really excited to share the thyroid reset diet. There have been many papers that I cited showing that people can reverse thyroid disease the vast majority of the time. And when your output is better, it's greater benefits than there is from simply taking medication from outside of your body. So that's one big difference. But the other thought is that for some people with medication, it might make them more able to lose weight, but it still might take efforts or steps to make that happen. And then I would still think about the metabolism reset as a good step toward it. Okay. So I'm seeing some good questions coming in live too. Kathy's with us. Happy Halloween to you too, Kathy. Saw your comments. I'm glad you enjoyed the costume. You know that the night I was wearing it, I was doing a lot of high kicks, as Richard would too, and I pulled a hamstring after a while. But long as you got a kick out of it, it was worth the pulled hamstring. Oh, wow. I just saw a comment from Kathy too. So glad you taught us about iodine. I'm losing my hair and was tempted to look up the ingredients on a new hair supplement. It has 225 micrograms of iodine and all the other stuff. Yeah, I'm glad you caught that. Okay. So Patricia's asking, let me just take this one up real quick. I'm going to change this screen here. There we go. Patricia was asking, once you have nodules, can they go back down with supplements? Yeah, great question, Patricia. And there's good data saying they can. I'll drop a link up here. I'll put the exact one up. I made a blend for that purpose called Nodule Control. And if you had asked me, I don't know, 5 years ago, I think I would have been skeptical about whether supplements could help thyroid nodules. But when I was writing the manuscript for the Thyroid Reset Diet, I was going through exhaustively every data point I could find about food and thyroid disease. And looking at food, I would stumble across a lot of citations looking at food ingredients or supplements. And I saw all this data about really useful things that had not been incorporated into supplement blends before ever. And one was towards nodules. There's a lot of good data about how certain ingredients were clinically proven to shrink thyroid nodules. So, bang, that's nodule control. So, easy answer for you. Now, not to be a broken record, but the other thing relevant to nodules is insulin metabolism. There is data saying that if people can lower insulin, that they can benefit their nodules as well. If it's high going into it, it doesn't have to be too low. Too low is actually not good for insulin. But if it's high going into it and they're brought back to a good range, that can be helpful for nodules. So, but yes, supplements can make a big difference. And that's exactly why that blend was formulated. These were all ingredients that were independently in clinical trials showing they had a big reduction on thyroid nodules. The amount of reduction was based on how large the nodules were going into it. The average reduction was by about 50%, but some of the larger nodules went down by 75% or greater. So, really cool thing. Okay, so there's one more sent in advance that I'll touch on, and then I'll grab a couple more of these that have come in live. And the other one sent in advance was asking about chromium. Cindy was asking about chromium. What does it do for the body? Is it helpful for those with hypothyroid and low adrenal function? Will it make those worse? Cindy recognized Richard, Mr. Simmons as well. So yeah, chromium, it's a useful thing. It's a funny thing, but the large studies on it came from a university not far from where I'll be this evening, at Bemidji State University. And these were in the early 90s, and they showed that chromium was an essential part of a thing called glucose tolerance factor. So insulin, I mentioned, pulls glucose into cells and then it becomes utilized one way or another. But how it works is that there's a receptor that responds to insulin. If the receptor is not there, insulin doesn't work as well, and the glucose may stay high, or the body might have to make extra insulin to get the same job done. So glucose tolerance factor is what makes insulin effective. And it turns out chromium is a part of what is needed for glucose tolerance factor. And it's an essential mineral. Now, the mindset I want you guys to have is not that chromium lowers insulin. The proper mindset, the more accurate one, is that a lack of chromium raises insulin. Now, that might have sounded really similar, but it's not. And here's why it's not. If you already have enough chromium, extra amounts won't push down insulin further. So it's when you're lacking it that it makes a big difference. And this is true for nutrients almost across the board. So it's a good thing. Now, like all minerals, chromium in vast excesses can be counterproductive. It can displace other minerals. Cindy, really easy solution. I've included that in the Thyroid Daily Multi. So yeah, the multi that I recommend across the board for helping stabilize thyroid function includes chromium picolinate, like you were asking about. My goal dosage was 35 micrograms. We know that's enough to be helpful, but it's not counterproductive. It's not harmful, or it's not inhibitory for other minerals. Like chromium can be at excess. But yeah, it's a good thing. It's an essential nutrient. It's now recognized as such. And if you're on the Thyroid Daily, you got your bases covered. Adding more on top of that wouldn't be of any additional benefit. Okay. So those are a few that were sent in advance. And now I want to grab a few more that are coming in live. I'm seeing a lot of you guys come on and lots of good questions and comments. Rita, looking forward for the reset diet. That's cool, Rita. Thank you for that. Are you referring to the thyroid reset? It's the most recent. And curious which one you're talking about and how far you are into it and what are some of the goals you're hoping for. Happy to give you further feedback. Here's a great one from Anna. And this is one that I do hear. What if you had radioactive iodine or had your thyroid removed? Will the thyroid reset work? Yeah, it's a really good question, Anna. So I've talked a lot about how it can help restore and improve thyroid function. And obviously that's for those who have a thyroid. Now, Very brief aside, there's a thing called a suprapyramidal thyroid lobe. We see the thyroid looking like this little butterfly thing. It's actually got like a unicorn horn for about a quarter of people. And those who have thyroidectomy and the tissues analyzed afterwards, as many as half had some tissue like that was left behind. So somewhere about a third of people who had their thyroid taken out had some remaining tissue that's enough to where it might be active. So even if yours is gone, there might be some there. And we have had cases in my clinic of those who had a thyroid taken out that did regain full thyroid function and no longer needed medication. So it's possible. But even apart from that, if you have no thyroid at all, there's still a lot to think about in terms of how your body responds to thyroid hormone. So there's how much you make might not change, but how well you use what you're taking, that can change a lot. And extra iodine makes your body fight the production of thyroid hormone, but it can also make you fight the usage of thyroid hormone. So for those that lack a thyroid, the main thing I look for there is seeing if they get better symptom control by following the thyroid reset diet. And we get tons of feedback about just that happening. People find that they may need less medication, or more commonly, their medication just works better. They get better control of symptom than they were having before, really because their body is no longer fighting it. And that's the central iodine paradox. When you get too much iodine, your body blocks it, and you block the production and the usage of thyroid hormone. So the paradox is iodine is good, but too much iodine blocks iodine. So a lot of iodine is like an iodine deficiency. And yeah, not intuitive, but that's the truth. That's how it works out in the body. Okay, so Kelly, here's a follow-up question to one that I mentioned before. If you have nodules but normal blood levels, is it worth taking the nodule supplement? That's a really logical question, Kelly. And the short answer is yes. So if your blood levels are showing thyroid disease, that's not uncommon, and that can change some other treatment considerations for sure. But independent of your thyroid levels, if you do have nodules, the nodule control can still be useful. And the studies on it weren't of people that had nodules plus hypo or plus hyper. They did, I'm sorry, or Hashi. They did, but the goal wasn't to see it change the thyroid levels. The goal was to see changes in the thyroid nodules. By and large, the people were stable on their levels, but they still saw their nodules come down. So, yep, it can still be useful that way. More sugar I meant from our health coach friend. Let me go back a little bit. Sometimes when I drink coffee, I get lightheaded, assuming my blood sugar is down. Is my body dumping more glucose in the bloodstream to compensate? Got it. Yeah, more sugar you meant. You know what? It sure does. That's a funny thing. Coffee is not bad. Tea is not bad. They can be very dense sources of antioxidants and phytonutrients, but a lot of folks are sensitive to caffeine. And when you consume caffeine, it gives you energy, partially because it raises your blood sugar. There's always some glucose you've got in storage and some you've got in circulation. And what caffeine does is it takes the glucose in storage and pushes it into circulation. Kind of like if you just ate a sweet or you drank a soda. I've heard people say that they would never add sugar to their coffee, but coffee adds sugar to your bloodstream. You raise your blood sugar. And it's often not bad or harmful or worrisome, but that's one of the ways that it does affect people. And so if you are prone to have your blood sugar be erratic, then sometimes coffee can worsen that for sure. And people can see that when they're measuring that closely. Oh, here's a great one. I'd love to address this one. This is from RR, one of our friends on YouTube. Why does thyroid medication unmask adrenal insufficiency, and how does a person fix this? So thank you for asking that question. So this is the source of the trope that goes around, you must fix the adrenals before you fix the thyroid. And the idea is that if it's said as if someone were to go on or change thyroid medication, if they have any adrenal problem, that it's horribly dangerous and a bad idea and it won't work, and that the real problem is the adrenals. The partial truth behind it is that if someone did have untreated hypothyroidism and untreated Addison's disease, adrenal insufficiency. In those cases, what happens is, I mentioned before about insulin and glucose and stuff. So cortisol does something like that for thyroid hormones. Normal ebbs and flows of cortisol, that's the morning spike and the nighttime shutoff, that allows thyroid hormones to come into the cells and get utilized properly. In the case of adrenal insufficiency, so not adrenal fatigue, but like full on Addison's disease, so like a few people per million, in the case of that, the body is exaggerating how it takes up thyroid hormone. There's more coming in than would otherwise. I'm sorry, when you're adding in glucocorticoids. So if someone has adrenal insufficiency, you're changing how they use thyroid hormones when you give them glucocorticoids. So if you give someone thyroid hormones first, now they eliminate their cortisol faster. So if someone has no cortisol from adrenal insufficiency and they go on thyroid hormone because they're deficient, they will worsen their adrenal insufficiency. So in that case, the correct order of sequence for the endocrinologist is to first treat the adrenal insufficiency and then treat hypothyroidism. And that can be like days apart. But again, that's when there's both Addison's disease and untreated hypothyroidism. That has nothing to do with what's called adrenal fatigue or adrenal stress. It's not at all relevant. So the truth is that it is important to be aware of your adrenal health and your adrenal function, even without there being Addison's or adrenal insufficiency. And it can make a big difference to managing your thyroid symptoms by controlling that better. Yeah. Okay, so let me grab a few more related follow-up questions here. Yeah, there's a lot of good ones coming in. I got to pick and choose here. A quick one for Deborah. On 10 milligrams of methimazole, T4 free 1.1, TSH to low. Is there a way to raise it to normal? Thyroid stimulating immunoglobulin is 143%. Yeah, Deborah. So if you're not already, please do follow the thyroid reset diet. Please do also consider hyperthyroid support. I'll get a link to that for you. That is really to help all treatments of Graves work better, more effectively and more quickly. Having said all that, there are those that need more methimazole, especially at first. So what methimazole does is it works by slowing the iodine uptake within the thyroid. And just saying that, it seems obvious how lowering your iodine intake would make it all work better because there's less iodine there for you to have to block. And the nutrients in hyperthyroid support, I just put that link up, they're all things that make methimazole work better. They're things that lower the complication risks for hyperthyroidism. And they're also things that cut the risk of Graves' eye disease. So super, super useful that way. But there are those where at first they need more methimazole to get under control and less for maintenance. Once you get under really good control, I'm going back to where your question was. Once you're under good control, it's pretty common that within 12 to 18 months, there's no need for ongoing treatment, that the body can stabilize and move out of a hyperthyroid response. So yeah. Kelly, I'm sensitive to caffeine too. Makes me feel weird, dizzy, and lightheaded. I'm with you, Kelly. I actually really love the taste of coffee. My dear wife hates the smell of it, but I love the taste and smell. I love tea, but I'm so sensitive. I can't do those things on a regular basis at all. So here's a related one too. So just what we're just talking about, Tristan or Tristan, I've heard it pronounced both ways. Normal to continue PTU when blood show normal levels, TSH 2.6. So if people weren't aware, so PTU is same idea as methimazole. So treating Graves' disease. And Tristan, there does come a point for most where they can back off and they need less to block that. The same things I said about hyperthyroid support and the thyroid reset diet can make that more probable. But it's common to reach a point at where PTU or methimazole causes hypothyroidism. The TSH elevates. And that's a problem, but it's a good problem. It means the body no longer needs as much effort to slow things down. So yeah. Oh, wow. So many good questions, you guys. I'm not going to get to all of these today. I can totally tell you this. Um, Normal schedule for next week. So please do come back for next week for Office Hours Live. We'll come back at some of the ones that we missed today. But I see so many good questions I want to talk about. um, So from Anna, what are your thoughts on synthetic T2, 3,5-diiodo-L-thyrionine? So Anna, there's also a little prime mark that goes on that second 3,5 prime diode, because they're different with or without that, but that's the one you're talking about. Yeah, Anna, I've thought a lot about that. Not many people have, but I have. I considered using that in various ways at various times. There are some drawbacks, and they're substantial. So there's no good data on how much is an appropriate dose, and it's a very hard thing to standardize, and there's no way to measure blood levels. So T2, this is the active form of T2, it is naturally occurring in desiccated thyroid. The amounts there are amounts that are proportionate to what the human body does make. So no big drawbacks about it from that context. But you do find it in kind of gray legal. They're not totally legal, but they're not totally illegal. It is found in some supplements. There is data saying if you take enough of them, that it can cause cardiac problems. Now, a big issue is that it doesn't suppress the TSH very easily. So you can get hyperthyroid, but not know that you're getting hyperthyroid. That's a concern I have, and that's why I wouldn't recommend its use in isolated supplements. In the context of natural thyroid dosed appropriately when it's needed, no problems at all. But in isolation, I don't recommend for those reasons. So a follow-up question, can you put the link for the challenge in the chat again? You betcha. Here you go to our health coach. I'm getting this back up in our chat on Instagram. And just in case someone's looking for it on the other platforms, I'll share it there again as well. Boom. Okay. Betty from selenium and iodine. Betty from, I could talk a long time about those. Please, if there's a more specific question, put in, and I'm happy to address those if I can today. One that I saw before that was related was from Raquel, how to bring cortisol down. So let's talk about that. So I talked briefly about adrenal insufficiency, and I mentioned how some people they can't make any. Basically, that's like Hashimoto's of the adrenals. It's much more rare than Hashimoto's of the thyroid, but it's also autoimmune. Now, what's much more common is to have an abnormal cortisol rhythm. So I mentioned before how cortisol should be high in the morning, low at night. That's called a healthy cortisol slope. For some people, it's always high or always low or backward. Those can all happen. So talking about lowering cortisol, that's generally for someone to where it's too high at some parts of the day and maybe all throughout the day. And the short answer is that's what the adrenal reset diet is all about. And that's using carbohydrate in a strategic way to help lower cortisol. So cortisol is a glucocorticoid. Cortisol and insulin live on a seesaw. When one goes high, one goes low. They basically oppose one another. And you can deliberately have a healthy, appropriate insulin effect to bring down cortisol. And the timing of that can be relevant to when one's cortisol is high. The other big factors that affect cortisol are light exposure and timing of the meals. But those are the main points in the adrenal reset diet. And another trick you can go to is, I'm going to put this in here, adrenalquiz.com. And you can easily see what your likely cortisol balance is. And it'll give you feedback on what to do to go about helping with it. So yeah, you can find that on adrenalquiz.com. I'll put that in both of their links. And actually, Cindy is saying that diet, adrenal reset, really helped me. Thank you for that feedback, Cindy. Yeah, that made a difference for some people. One or two more. Kathy's asking, if I am taking your crashed reset packs, any reason to add in the adrenal balance capsules too? Kathy, I know of your case and your details. I would not recommend that. The crash packs, just for you would be fine. I would just stick with those. Okay, I have two more. I've already got two more picked out. So Betty from mechanism of selenium with iodine. So short version is we need iodine. It's an essential nutrient. Some people are intolerant of it. Anyone can get toxic. Anyone can get way too much. That's not as common, but some people are intolerant of a little bit more than normal. Not even like a dangerous amount, but some people just don't tolerate slight excesses. Now, to some extent, that intolerance is hardwired or genetic. If someone is low in selenium, whatever their tolerance for iodine is, will be even lower. So we need some selenium to process iodine. It doesn't mean that with selenium we can consume any amount of iodine safely. Doesn't mean that at all. But if we're selenium deficient, we have even less tolerance for a range of iodine. So we always need some iodine, but we all have our personal range. And those prone to thyroid disease, they have a narrower range and a lower range. So that's the big difference. Ashley, I love your liver reset. I have made all my friends and family get the book. I'm doing my second round. I think I'll do it every fall. That's awesome, Ashley. I don't know if you saw, but we're doing a big group in the coming week, like right before the big holiday season. So yeah, if you've not done yours already this fall, that could be a good time for that. Dr. Stephanie is with us. I see a lot of healthcare professionals that come on more and more. And to make you all aware, there are some trainings that I'm doing for you all as well. And I'm going to put a link up here so you can find out about that. If you go to thyroidspecificformulations.com and I'm a provider, you follow the I'm a provider link and you get a provider account, which is a free thing, then you'll be in the loop for our practitioner training. And I'm actually doing one, which is going to be December 7th. This will be a deep dive on natural integrative treatment of Graves' disease. So this is for practitioners only. So if that's of interest, Dr. Stephanie or other healthcare practitioners, welcome to come. That'll be December 7th. And yeah, thyroid specific formulations, just follow the I'm a provider steps, open up a provider account, and you'll be in the loop for that. So happy to see you. Frankie, what is a liver reset? Is that the MRD? It sure is, Frankie. And you know, Frankie, I remember the conversation in New York with the publishers about should this be the metabolism reset or the liver reset? It was close. It was a really close call, Frankie, but we ended up at metabolism reset. It was about reversing fatty liver. That's what it's really all about. But fatty liver is the main thing that slows down metabolism for people. So that's the connection. Cynthia, I watched the Hidden Iodine series and my mind is blown. Yeah, I just talked briefly about it now, but let me share that one too, because that was a really well done series that some friends helped me put together. And it's still available. You can check it out for free. It was a detailed docuseries all about the role that iodine plays on thyroid health and how there's invisible hidden sources of it you might not be aware of. So you can check that out, invisibleiodine.com. That's available to watch. And yeah, Cynthia enjoyed that. And thank you for that feedback, Cynthia. It was a fun thing to make that for y'all. Okay. I think I'm just looking for follow-up questions on ones that I already covered. Oh, Cynthia had a good one here too. Let me get, you guys, there's a lot of really good questions here. All right, let's just do two real quick. So Elizabeth, making good progress with thyroid reset diet for Hashimoto's, yay. Struggling with horrible menopause, can sleep, hot flashes, night, muscle aches, just started HRT. Will this help thyroid too? Elizabeth, it may do a really good job with your hot flashes. It won't help your thyroid. Now, if it includes estradiol, which it generally does, it may slow your thyroid output. Elizabeth, I don't know if you're on thyroid meds. If you are, it's very common to need a dose step up when you go on natural HRT. That's true for any HRT, natural or not. But it's really common to need a little bit more thyroid during that time. Or if your thyroid just stabilized from the reset, you might see your TSH go up by a couple of points by going on HRT. Doesn't mean your gland is shutting down. It's just a totally normal change in thyroid binding globulin. The hot flashes, a few more thoughts there. I've got a book coming out in the spring, and it's going to have a whole lot of recipes for helping hot flashes. That's one of the key focuses of it. One of the things on my to-do list this week is to do another round of edits on the new cookbook. But yeah, it's going to be about hormonal symptoms like hot flashes. Cliff's notes for you, alcohol and caffeine. We picked on caffeine earlier. And again, nothing bad. I saw some folks freaking out. They can't give up their coffee. That's okay. You don't have to. Nothing bad about it. But it can also aggravate hot flashes for those prone to them. So try really going down on alcohol and caffeine and including soy. Now, the data on soy and overall health and thyroid health, it's really cut and dry. And I know there's a lot of folks that talk about scary things about soy. I've dug so hard trying to find the answers to that. There's just no scary things. And there's so much data about benefit. And there's so much data about benefit for hot flashes. Now, Elizabeth, the soy benefit comes from your gut flora making a compound called equol, EQUOL. Most Asian women can make equol out of soy. About a third of Caucasian women cannot make it. And in those cases, it doesn't make a big difference. The more your diet has a broad range of plant foods, however, the more likely you are to make equol out of soy. So having flax seeds, legumes, nuts and seeds, lots of veggies, cruciferous veggies, the more kinds of plants you eat, the more likely soy is to work for you because of the effects upon the flora. And last one for tonight. This is from Cynthia, who had a comment as well. Hypo since I was 13, and that was, she's now 57. Hashimoto's was diagnosed more recently. TPO's at 94. Went to endodiagnose hirsutism. TSH went down, still low. Also found other hormones are super low. Testing this week, a whole lot of stuff. Any other test you'd suggest? Biggest change, stopping lamictal, which suppresses glutamate. There's a connection. Boy, Cynthia, all really, really good questions. Cynthia, you might be a good candidate for a second opinion consult. You would be totally welcome to round up, I'm getting this link here, to round up all those labs when they come in and send me for a second opinion. I'd be happy to talk through all of that and make sense of that with you based on those findings and talk about some natural ways to go about making sense of it and helping it. And, you know, my bias is that your body has an amazing capacity to heal itself when it's given a good chance. Other things to think about looking for, you talked about a pretty thorough list. Yeah, you've got your antibodies current. One thing you might think about with that would be IGF-1 also. I'm just going to type that in this note. One more thing that would clarify a few of the things you are testing. It might just be not typed in, but I would add that to the list if there is room. But yeah, I'd be happy to talk through those with you and make some sense out of that. Just go to Thyroid Opinion. And this is available for people. This is available for people wherever you are in the country, wherever you are in the world. I don't always do these. They're not always available, but I am currently, and I do have some open in this next month. So you can go there, you can book a time, we can speak one-on-one in person, and we can make sense out of your labs, your findings. The link that I shared, thyroidopinion.com, tells you all about what that includes, what it doesn't include, you know, who can do it, what you can expect, and you can just book it from right there. And you got a chance to also upload any data that I'll review beforehand, and I'll come educated and ready to speak. So yeah, but also consider your IGF-1, Cynthia, that could be useful. Okay, that's it we got. Happy Halloween. Dr. C here with you. There was a lot of good questions, you guys, and wish I could have gotten more of those. I see some from Laura. I see many others. Yeah, come on back next week. Office hours live. Come early. Put yours up quickly for best odds. And I'll look forward to seeing you guys then. In the meantime, have a happy and healthy and safe Halloween. Good night.